Well, hello, good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Welcome to Student Affairs Live, the online learning community for student affairs educators. I'm your host, Keith Edwards. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a speaker, consultant, coach who works to help individuals, organizations, and communities realize their fullest potential. You can find out more about me at keithedwards.com. On today's live broadcast, we're discussing the role of gratitude in student learning and student affairs leadership. This episode of Student Affairs Live is part of the Higher Ed Live network. All of our episodes offer you direct access to the best and brightest minds in education. Be a part of our live broadcast by sharing your knowledge. Participate in today's discussion by tweeting us using hashtag #HigherEdLive. Thanks to Robbie Williford, who uses he, him, his pronouns from Ball State, who's tweeting at Higher Ed Live today and monitoring today's back channel for us. If you have questions for our panelists, please tweet at hashtag Higher Ed Live, and we'll do our best to incorporate that into today's discussions. We broadcast Student Affairs Live approximately twice each month on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Today's live broadcast is powered by Platform Q, Education's conduit online engagement platform. Learn how to integrate continuous online engagement into your marketing and enrollment plans using Conduit. Visit platformqedu.com. All of our episodes are recorded. They're free and easy to access in the video archives at higheredlive.com, or take Higher Ed Live with you on the go by subscribing to the podcast. Higher Ed Live is produced by M. Stoner, a digital-first agency committed to tailored solutions that drive real results. New digital admissions research offers insights into the nuances of prospective teen students' behavior during the college search and selection process. M. Stoner and Target X designed a survey focusing on how prospective teens use a range of digital tools, social media, websites, email, and digital ads as they make this vital decision in their lives, and what information is most helpful at each stage in the journey. Sign up now to receive early access to the digital admissions white paper and a first look at the data. Now, on to today's show. We are talking about gratitude, its role in student learning, and how we can practice it as leaders. Let's meet our panelists. Let's start with Lisa. If you could just tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Landerman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Assistant Vice President and Dean of Student Life at Roger Williams University in Bristol, Rhode Island.
And Nadia.
Hi, my name is Nadia Rosemont. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Assistant Dean of Student Affairs and Student Life at University of Toronto, Scarborough.
Thank you, Nadia, and we're really glad you're joining us from Toronto, Canada. And when we push this out, all of Student Affairs Canadian Twitter erupted with praise and enthusiasm for how wonderful you are. So we are glad to have a celebrity here in our midst, and glad for our colleagues in Canada and Student Affairs who are clearly big fans.
Thank you.
Well, hello, I am David. I am here at the University of Minnesota, where I teach in the leadership minor, but I have had many lives in student affairs before this point, starting in residence life and then working with peer education for a number of years through NASPA, and doing a lot of consulting and training. And I think the core theme through all of my work has been student development and student growth. So I'm excited to be here.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm excited to have you, David. I first met David when I was a student at Hamline University, came to do some trainings in peer education way back then. And so it's great to have you connected. It's nice to meet this Canadian celebrity, Nadia. And Lisa Landerman and I have known each other for a long time, including 8 years that we worked together at McAllister College. So great to have folks here. I want to begin, and let's just do a round of gratitudes. It looks like, Nadia, are you with us? Looks like you froze. Yep. And we'll see if we can get Nadia to log out and log back in, and we'll get her unfrozen. So we'll do our gratitudes without Nadia, and hopefully we'll get her back here momentarily. But we're just going to each share a gratitude, and we'll do 3 rounds. Mine is I'm celebrating my children's Halloween candy, which I am enjoying. How about you, David?
I'm in Minnesota. Winter has come, so I'm celebrating really good socks today.
Excellent.
So I would say what I'm appreciative of is having purposeful work. I just came from a great meeting and really appreciate that I get to do that every day.
Excellent. I'll celebrate the round 2 here. I will celebrate great coffee, which I enjoyed this morning and I'm still enjoying.
I will go with no migraine, because sometimes that's the day I need to navigate, but not today.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
I would say I am really thankful for the wonderful sunshine on this very crisp day.
Well, I will follow that up. It is not sunshiny here in Minnesota. It is snowing. It is lovely and beautiful, and I will not have to shovel. So I'm looking forward to that.
And my last one will just be reconnecting with Keith after this time. That feels good. And also to be included in a list of what might be the best and brightest. I'm going to carry that forward.
Excellent. And I will also celebrating, it looks like we have Nadia back, unfrozen.
Yay!
Sorry that happened. So we can see
Sorry about that.
Yes. And why don't you just share just one thing that you're grateful for today?
I'm grateful for heaters. Winter's pushing here, so definitely grateful.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're all grateful for heaters, as my furnace is kicking in right here, right now as well. So we have this episode on gratitude. A good friend and colleague recommended this as a topic, and this is something that I actually talk about often, and how Lisa and I connected on this. Often when I'm working with campuses, I share with them how we can build gratitude into our practice. And one of the things I've learned through consulting and coaching is that people don't celebrate or practice gratitude nearly enough. We don't celebrate the successes nearly enough, and we certainly don't celebrate our failures nearly enough for what it learns and what it can teach us. And so one of the things I'm often encouraging folks to do is to celebrate and be grateful more often, and not wait until things are going well to practice gratitude, but practice gratitude as a way to help things go well. One of the things we know that when we are focused on threat and anxiety and scary things in the world, we focus on that really well. And that has served us evolutionarily very well. But when something is scary, we focus on it entirely so that it gets our attention and we can protect ourselves from the danger. But it narrows our ability. We're less open to diversity. We're less open to creativity. And when you practice gratitude, it floods your brain with a neurochemical called serotonin. And that neurochemical serotonin, when that's in your brain, you are happier, you're healthier, and you're more effective at what you do. You're happier makes sense. The healthier part, you get fewer colds. They don't last as long because of that neurochemical and that gratitude and what it does to your brain and throughout your body. It also makes you more effective at what you do because you're more open to creativity, you're more open to diversity, you're more open to solutions and different possibilities. And your peripheral vision, what you can see from the sides, literally expands because you're not under threat. And so one of the things I often recommend is starting with gratitude, starting with celebrations. I start all my meetings with gratitudes and celebrations, just like we did today. I start all my coaching conversations with celebrations and gratitude. It can be real quick, just like we did very quickly today. But when you do that, it really elevates the serotonin, and then it makes it easier for your team or your conversation to take on the real problems and challenges you're trying to navigate. So the idea isn't that we ignore the problems and challenges and pretend that everything's great. That's actually terrible neuroscience. But the idea is that we practice gratitude so that we're more effective at how we take on those problems and challenges. I love this video from Soul Pancake on the science of gratitude. It's one I show often and have shown with others. And so we're getting that tweeted out to folks. We're going to get them shared out so you can see that video and take a look. And then we're also going to get a link out with some other connections and resources. So I just wanted to begin with that little bit about the neuroscience of gratitude. And then we can jump into student learning and leadership unless any of our panelists want to jump in on that.
I just want to also just and that whole beginning with gratitude. For so long in my practice, whether it was in class or in meetings, we would start with who's not here. And immediately scarcity entered the room and started disrupting that several years ago with celebrating the present. Like, who is with us and what did it take for you to get here? and how that might have been hard for you to navigate that, but you found a way, and really celebrate those who are around the table and are here to do the work, and honor that before then we acknowledge that we have to honor some absent as well, and give good wishes to them. But I think even that, the celebrating of who is with us, it starts with abundance and makes us feel good about our work together.
I love that, David. And you know, I don't know if this is where you get that language, but when I hear the language of scarcity versus the language of abundance, I think of Brene Brown,
Yes.
and that's where that kind of comes for me, which I think is a really great connection. Lisa, were you going to add to that? I know you're a big Brene Brown fan.
I am a big Brene Brown fan, and I would echo that, and it really connects also to me when I hear the scarcity and abundance around sort of honoring the social justice privilege. I think, to me, the intersection between gratitude and kind of our social justice goals is a reminder of that, and where that work gets hard. So leading with gratitude also helps me carry that lens for equity and inclusion conversations that need to be a part of it. So for me, when I think of my gratitude, that's really connected. I think I get that from Brene Brown, but also a lot of great social justice educators as well. And a way of that not being sort of centering the privilege and getting ready to be open to possibilities and curiosity, as all the things you named at the top.
Right. And how do we notice and identify oppression, but not get stuck in that noticing and identifying, and move toward more liberation is really great. Nadia, I see you nodding along. Do you want to add to this?
Yeah, totally. I feel like when you practice those types of exercises, it like shifts you mentally and physically to like another way of thinking, like almost like your brain waves are like, these are all the problems, these are all the things bringing me down. And when someone asks you, what are you grateful for? It's like, oh, I got to go over here. So it's pretty powerful to shift, you know, from to positive.
Right.
And I think
and it's a shift. Go ahead, David.
Well, I was just thinking that when, you know, back to the Brene Brown thing, I remember when Brene was talking about how gratitude is an antidote for anxiety. And I really thought, oh, I could use that in my life. But to Nadia's, you know, definition of a shift, it also has to start to become like the water that we live in. Because I know in the beginning, I read that from Brene and I'm like, oh, I need more gratitude in my life. And I started, you know, getting anxious about not having more gratitude in my life, because I would be like scheduling it like, oh, I should be making a list before I go to bed, or like we have to have 10 minutes of a meeting. And suddenly it became actually more anxiety producing when I tried to compartmentalize my gratitude. And then learning over time that it's not something you schedule, but it's a way of being. And it's present with us, then I agree with you so much, Nadia. The shift then happens naturally because you just bring it with you, and you bring it with you then in your interactions and the way you take on adversity, and also just in the way that you hear and provide empathy. It's become, for me at least, part of who I am instead of something that I do. But that took me a long time to learn.
Right. Right. Well, and I think this knowing, doing, and being is kind of the progression of a lot of our learning, right? How many of us know better but don't do better? Maybe for certain, but then knowing and then shifting to doing and sort of building in, I will think about gratitude before bed. I will set aside this time. I will, that doing then becomes a way that we practice it, and then it becomes part of our being. And so I love this progression. One of the reasons I often mention is I start every meeting with celebrations or gratitude is because then people are walking to the meeting with me and going, oh, he's going to start with celebrations. What's he going to do? And they're going to think of like, I don't want to share that one. That's a good one, but it's a little too personal. Oh, I could share that one. And before you even get to my meeting, because you know I always do that, you've already thought of 12. Now you're just going to share those. And what happens when people share those is it boosts our serotonin. The antidote is to do highs and lows, which is just terrible neuroscience practice. Because every low, human beings pay twice as much attention to the low as we do the high. So if you share highs and lows, you're depleting the serotonin of your team. And as we mentioned before, this is not to pretend that everything is good and everything's great, because sometimes we can celebrate the really hard things. Right. So I hear people share things like, well, what I'll celebrate is we're in the midst of a divorce, but we haven't taken it out of the kids yet. Or my mother was just diagnosed with breast cancer, and I'm celebrating and grateful that we do have access to healthcare, because not everyone does. And I think when you can get to that level of gratitude and celebrate parts of the challenges and problems and even life or death things, that's really powerful. Well, that's a great kind of setup. I'm energized. I feel the serotonin flowing through me. Let's talk about how we build this into our work with student learning. So how have you included gratitude in your efforts to foster student learning? Nadia, I think we're going to lead off with you. How have you built this in?
I started thinking about my role in when I became a leadership development coordinator earlier in my career, and discovering Clifton's strengths and incorporating that within my leadership workshops and programs. And I really liked the foundation of it based on positive psychology and kind of celebrating your natural talents, what comes natural, what comes easily to you. Oftentimes when students do their top 5, even staff, we're always like, oh, I have empathy, I'm so emotional, I'm so, I have some, right? People go there. I think in terms of the Clifton strengths, it's about like being grateful and realizing this comes natural to you without even thinking, without even like breathing. You're able to read a room with like breathing. You're able to restore, problem solve a problem. Like that's a big deal. Whereas other people are going to workshops, going to extra classes to learn this. You just do it with ease, and having people be like, oh yeah, you're right. I never thought about it that way. So moving from like a grateful gratitude of having those strengths and celebrating it and owning it and leading with it as well. So those are one elements of I came across. Also the idea of vision boards, manifestation. So the practice of having gratitude journals to kind of increase more abundance in your life. So being aware of what you already have to lead and kind of attract more. So that type of messaging when it comes to like leadership development, a little bit new agey, a little bit forward thinking, but now it's like within our mainstream, and it's not so weird anymore to be talking about like the energy that you put out, you attract, right? Now everyone's like, yeah, obvious. But before it was kind of like a new way of thinking and being aware of. So those are some of the things I was thinking about when I came to applying gratitude with student learning.
I love how you mentioned
Great,
strengths. I do. I love how you mentioned strengths, Nadia. I think that is some really good language for our students to feel like they're vital, to feel like they have superpowers, like there are times when they will be needed and they can step forward with those strengths. But I loved what you said about how not just knowing it, but owning it. Because I think sometimes what we do with gratitude is we just name it, and then we don't put any accountability or responsibility behind that. Like, oh, it's so great that I have this, but then what do I want to do with that, right? And how we can remind our students, like, when that strength is called for, that's your chance to step in and provide that, right? And to know and to feel vital and powerful. Like, nobody got 2 strengths, right? Like, you get a top 5, like,
exactly.
And so to feel that, and so be grateful that was the gift that you bring, but then give that gift and share that gift. And I think I see students getting really empowered when they know that.
I kind of take that same philosophy when I meet with students one-on-one. So the idea of how we're coaching students, and often it's around some distressful, difficult, I'm thinking of taking a leave of absence, and ways that I can sort of be a contradiction to the distress that's coming in, to say, wow, it's really great that you are prioritizing your well-being right now. That's a really courageous act, to step out and to hopefully help them cultivate some gratefulness for their care of self, for them coming to seek help, for them trying to grapple with a difficult problem that others might try to avoid. So there are ways, when I think about how in working with students, I look at it as trying to cultivate a sense of gratitude for their best thinking, for where they are in that moment, for engaging in a struggle. So I think that's a way I think about, kind of in my style as a practitioner, one way. I don't think I would have framed it as gratitude, but as I've gotten clearer about the power of gratitude, I really think it's related in how, kind of how I approach my student affairs practice with students one-on-one.
Well, and Lisa, you're reminding me about, this is not just about the one-on-one, but how we cultivate this as communities. And so as we talk about resilience within and across communities, how do we create not just people who can practice gratitude or meetings, but how do we create communities that can celebrate what they have going for them so that they are better at taking on the real problems and challenges that they face, so that they can see what the assets are, so that they can bring that strength. Here's what we have going. We have real problems, but we have people who care. We have people who are committed. We gathered here, right? Let's celebrate the people who gathered here to address these problems, rather than starting off with, why aren't there more people here and where is everybody? That gets to David's concept of scarcity mindset. But David, you've had a whole career of leadership development and peer education, and I'd love to hear from you how gratitude has expanded as this tool for connecting and collaborating with others.
Well, I think you hit the main theme right there, Keith. With collaboration, I really believe is the way forward. I think of some of the issues that our students are so they feel powerful and motivated to work on, whether it's climate or equity or healthcare. Like, these are issues that cannot be solved alone. Collaboration is the way forward. And there's so many links between gratitude and collaboration. Feeling grateful that I get to walk with you on this problem, that we are on the same team together, that you can carry me sometimes and I can carry you, that you bring gifts that I don't bring, that all those are tied to gratitude. I think it can be said that right now we live in a time maybe that seems a bit more like piracy, like take all you can, give nothing back. And we're trying to disrupt that a little bit with gratitude, saying there is abundance, that we don't have to have one winner here. We can work together. We can collaborate instead of compete. If you were in my class, one of the things you would hear me say a lot is, I want to live in a your awesome world. And I think we can have both. It doesn't have to be just one of us. And I think fostering that collaboration and being grateful for what each one of us brings just makes us more powerful exponentially.
Yeah, I think that's so great. You're reminding me of my 9-year-old daughter, who just thinks she's terrific, and her theme is that she is awesome, and she will tell you that, and she will tell people that. And I will say, I'm really glad you think that, but you're also no better than anyone else. And her response is, well, of course not, but I am awesome. And so there's not this, who's the awesome one, right? Yeah. It's I'm awesome and you're awesome and you're awesome. And how do we spread that around? And it's another great reminder. I mean, the beauty of having small children is they're just such a staunch illustration of all the nonsense that I've learned in becoming an adult. Right. Which is what you're calling this piracy mindset, which I love that, right? What can I get? What can I get? What can I get?
Yeah.
Lisa, you started doing Thankful Thursdays. I think this will be really helpful for folks who are thinking, this sounds great, but how would I do this? So tell us a little bit about how you've done that.
Sure. So I actually can't take credit for this idea. I've heard it at a conference, and I decided I'm going to take it and run with it. And the idea was to help teach students how to demonstrate gratitude for the people in their lives based on all the neuroscience that you brought out. So I just picked November as the month of giving and giving gratitude that we often around Thanksgiving. And so I call them Thankful Thursdays. And so I kind of made a list of benefits of gratitude, and I wrote a handout about how to write a gratitude letter. And I parked myself in the lobby of our Center for Student Development with stationery, and I play a Spotify list of songs of gratitude, and I have hot chocolate and snacks. And I'm sitting there writing my own gratitude letters, and people will come by and they'll just ask, can I take one? What are you doing? And so I had my first one last week, and I have people asking, I'm going to be at the next one. And so even if they don't sit with me, it has generated conversation. It has generated some buzz. I've had people come and take stationery, and I said, I'm going to come back and check in. Did you send the letter? And so again, of just trying to foster that it's as simple as a practice of writing a letter. I encourage people to even read that letter. I actually did that. I had a staff member recently leave and move on, and I wrote her a gratitude letter in our last one-on-one and read it to her, and just think it was a really powerful practice. And so it's something I'm going to also try as students who I'm connected to might leave and graduate, that to take this sort of actually putting in writing, and then they have that also as a keepsake. So whether it's among each other or writing to a family member, I offer to mail the letters if they want to. So we're just doing it for this month. We'll see how it sticks. I'm thinking about maybe next semester parking in the cafeteria, like during meals with all these signs, and have people see what are you doing. But just as a way to cultivate how simple it is and bring back the art of letter writing and reflection and expression. So it's been a fun experiment.
It's a great idea.
Thanks so much, Lisa, for sharing that example. And you've been kind enough to share with us some of the publicity that you raised. And so we'll get some, Robbie will get some links to that tweeted out. So people want to click on those links and see those examples, they could do that. And I love that you're acknowledging this was something you saw at a conference. In high school math, we call that cheating. And in the real world, we call that collaborating and using your peers as resources. So I'm so glad you shared the credit for that, and that's wonderful. Nadia, anything else coming to you about how you've built this in your work with students? You mentioned a few things at the beginning here, but what else is kind of coming to mind?
I think for me, like, I like that whole idea of the letter writing. I think it's a great idea. And when David was talking about like the collaboration versus competing, I was suddenly thinking about, so one thing that like our campus or our university is trying to work on, because we're so gigantic, is oftentimes when we work, we end up working in silos, not on purpose, just because we're like stuck on what we do, our departments, our desks. And we're really trying to actively work against that and work on collaboration. And I never thought about gratitude being a part of the collaboration, but it is typically when I work with people, it's because I'm grateful for what they bring to the project. Like someone's great with logistics, someone's great with the fine detail, someone's great with like maintaining our energy, our enthusiasm, and so on. So that was a really interesting, I had to write it down. I was like, wow, I never thought of those two in relationship with one another.
Terrific. Well, you're pointing us to where we want to move next, which is we've talked a little bit about how we might build this in with student learning, starting courses or workshops or one-on-one conversations, or even meeting with a student in crisis with, I know you're here for this reason, but what is going well about your experience? I think these are really great practices that can help move us from practicing to being grateful, as David pointed us to. But we also want to incorporate this into our leadership, how we lead teams, how we lead organizations. David, you're teaching in the leadership program at the University of Minnesota. So how have you incorporated this into leadership, and how would you recommend others do that?
Well, I think I want to start by reminding myself and others that you get as much joy about hearing someone is thankful for you as you do telling somebody you're thankful for them. I mean, it's a double win. And so to go back to what we talked about earlier, to not keep that secret, that knowledge to yourself. When somebody talks about a mentor or somebody who's been a powerful force in their life, to remind them, have you gone back and told that person that they had that impact with you? Because everyone assumes that everyone already knows that they were powerful or impactful or meaningful. And I know in my life, there are days, weeks, months where I'm like, am I making any difference at all? And so how do we remind ourselves to tell that story of when somebody moved the needle for us, or when somebody showed up in a powerful way, or changed our perspective, or had us think differently? I think that is a great part of leadership. I also think it's our job as managers to start making that the water that we work in. Often when we have a guest that comes to our staff meetings and we have to go around the room and like, what do you do here? What do you do? And everyone kind of laughs because they know when it gets to me, I always say, oh, I'm the person who walks around and says, we're so happy that you're here. Because I really believe that that's my job. to say, we're so happy that you're here. We're so lucky that you've chosen this as a place to work. I don't think that ever gets old. I think we have to keep saying that, and not just in our work. I'm a better partner when I tell my partner, I'm so grateful that you chose me. I'm so grateful I get to come home to this house. I'm a better parent when I'm able to say to my children, I feel so lucky to be your father. I don't know why we feel like we can't dole that out, because I think that it just never gets old. And so I just remind myself and try to model that by saying it over and over again. And guess what? I'm happy when I do it. And people are happy when they receive it. And suddenly it's a happy workforce. Yeah. And so let's work for and with each other. But somehow we feel like that is soft skills or not the work or unproductive. And I just find it's just the opposite. So how do we do that as managers, making that okay and give permission for other people to do that?
Well, and you're reminding me of two really great lessons. One is I still remember realizing that liking someone's status on Facebook, like there wasn't a finite amount of those I got. Like I can like a whole ton of stuff. Like if I like it, then like it, right? It's free. I can give it away. There's no, and so are smiles, and so are how are you and listening, and so are I'm so glad you're here. That it costs us nothing. And you're right. A lot of our listeners probably feel I need people to be grateful for me. I need people to be kind to me. I need that. I don't get that. And that's a real human experience. And what the research has shown is that when other people are kind to you, it feels great. And the thing that feels better is when you get to be kind to other people. So if you feel like you really need gratitude and you really need kindness, the best strategy is giving it away. And how they do this in science is that when someone buys coffee for you and you don't know who they are and they leave, they ask people, how good does that feel? And that feels really good. And the thing that feels even better is when they buy coffee for someone else and leave without getting acknowledged or any. So kindness given away actually means more to us than kindness received. And there's great data on this.
I will say, though, the one caveat is there needs to be authenticity behind it, right? And so when I say in my team, how lucky are we to be able to do this work? If not everybody feels that way, then it doesn't make you feel better. It doesn't. And so that can be an indicator also when somebody doesn't feel that way. Well, tell me why and tell me what I could do to change that. Like, it's like when we do like the sandwich feedback, like I'll say something good and then something, maybe a challenge or negative, and then something good again. Well, people see right through that. Like, okay, let's get to the thing you really want to say to me. If it's not authentic, it doesn't work in the same way. But I think we can be authentic because I think most of us feel very lucky to be in student affairs, to be able to do this work. We feel very lucky to be on this team. And so, but I just want to say that there have been times when I've faked my gratitude and it's almost been worse, because then someone goes, okay, well, why do you have to be making that up? What are you really trying to tell me? So I think authenticity matters with the gratitude that we give.
I think
that's so important.
I was going to say, I think what you're getting at is
Go ahead, Lisa. Go ahead.
What you're getting at is a difference between appreciation, gratitude, and recognition. And I think in a work setting, that gets confusing. This fear of, if I don't recognize everybody's good work, recognition being based on our positive results. And when people aren't meeting our results, or if we should miss someone, there's a fear we're going to leave someone out. And I would say I was really taught this lesson by a TEDx talk by Mike Robbins, who talked about gratitude at work, and that gratitude is acknowledging kind of who people are, that appreciating people's value, not necessarily what they do. And so recognition is important. We should reward people for feedback on their results. They met some goals and they did a great program. But even if someone didn't meet the goal, we can really appreciate, I saw how much heart you put into that. And I know that didn't go well. I know this wasn't what we expected, but I appreciate you sticking with it. That it's about appreciating someone's commitment and their essence and their care and who they are. And when we recognize, he threw out a statistic that 23% work productivity goes up, but when we really show gratitude, it can be 43%. That it's really gratitude for who people are and not just what they did. And I think that gets confusing at work. We're afraid we're going to reinforce work that isn't up to par. There's a fear of, recognizing work that didn't meet a standard. And I think sometimes then we are scarce with our appreciation and gratitude because of the fear of, we haven't met goal yet, or, and I think then that leads to morale, and we don't see all the benefits of gratitude that we've been talking about.
And I've learned about that as the distinction between gratitude and acknowledgement. So gratitude is thanking for people for things they've done. Thank you for staying late. Thank you for the hard work. And acknowledgement is thanking for people who they are, which the short version of this is the acknowledgement is you are blank, and then stop talking. So I can say, Lisa, thank you for staying late. Thank you for doing all of this. Thank you. Or I can say, Lisa, you are so dedicated.
Oh, okay.
And do you see how the not talking and you are so dedicated, and then you just step all over it and you ruin it. But just, you are so hardworking. And so many of us get thanked for things we do, our utility, our productivity, and turn ourselves into objects rather than for who we are. A really wonderful distinction. I'm so glad you brought that up. Nadia, you're assistant dean for students and student life there and in campus life. Tell us how you bring this in and how you lead your teams and your organization.
Sure. When you were sharing in the beginning, Keith, about how you start your meetings with what are you grateful for, I actually had that in my team meetings, and then my team got too big, and I felt like, okay, in order to save time and get to the stuff on the agenda, let me remove this warm fuzzy. Maybe we don't need it. And I saw a difference in my team dynamics over the last couple of months. And just last week, someone on our team was leaving. So I was like, for old time's sake, let's put this element back in, go around for his last meeting. And as people were going around, they started expressing gratitude towards the difference he made on the team, working with him over all these years. There were positive tears and emotion, and just seeing people being able to share and thank him. And also some team members saved and remembered thank yous from August and September, that since we didn't have it. And we're like, I know this already passed, but I thank you for this from orientation. I thank you for this from this event. I'm like, okay, I need to put this back in here. It's really important to have that opportunity for them to be able to thank each other along the way with the work that we do, right? So that was an interesting reflection for me. But even touching upon how you're saying about saying the statement and pausing, I think what I'm trying to help peers and students is working on the receiving. I notice sometimes when we receive thank you, it's like, no problem, don't worry about it. No, don't worry about it. It's quick banter, push. And I've been trying to practice myself, but also telling people to be just pause and say thank you. Instead of back with the, no, it was no trouble. Just be thank you. And and it's hard because we're programmed for some reason to push it back. I don't know why, to be humble or to seem like it was no big deal or to we get embarrassed, but the receiving of it is very important as well.
Yeah, it's funny because it doesn't work the other way. I know when I give students, I tell them why I'm grateful for them or what I think they're doing in such powerful ways. They want to point, well, so-and-so does it better than me, or they push back like you're saying. But when I give them a challenge, but sometimes I think you really struggle with this, they accept that right away. I know, right? That they have no trouble hearing. And then we can have a conversation about, okay, how did we get to this point? And what are the narratives that we've been hearing that make it so hard to feel like we are gift, that we are people who are here to support and care for each other, that we have superpowers that the world might want. What is caused that in us that makes it so hard to accept? And then when we don't accept that, how do we say to other people, you have no permission to accept that? So then how do we model that behavior? And so we take that in, so we feel vibrant, we feel caring. I think that's also part of our role.
Well, and I think you're right. I'm so glad you brought this up, Nadia, about the receiving. We have work to give gratitude, but work to receive it. And I often tell people, you know, when was the last time you got real serious criticism? And they'll tell a story. I say, now, what did you do with that criticism? Oh, I was obsessed about it. I didn't sleep. I read it over and over in my head. And I did this, and I told my mom, and I said, great, great, great. Now, I just gave you this compliment, and it was really heartfelt, and I really meant it. I want you to spend the same time and energy obsessing about this compliment as you do about the last criticism. And people go, I can't even begin. I want you to stay up at night obsessing about this gratitude and how wonderful you are. I want you to tell your mom. I want you to think about it when you're trying to relax. I want you to talk about it with other people. And if we could do that, but this again, as human beings, we have a 2 times negativity bias. We are programmed to pay twice as much attention to the threats and the scary stuff as the good stuff, which means we need to reprogram our brains not to be Pollyanna or inauthentic or fake or pretend. We got to shift our attention with mindfulness just so we have an accurate view of the world. And for our ancestors, being afraid of the tiger was a really good plan to stay alive. But now we have the news, which is a constant barrage of all the things you could, should be afraid of and scared of. And so how do we shift away to the good that's going in the world? Which in so many ways, in so many empirical ways, this is the best time ever to be alive for anyone, anywhere in the world. That doesn't mean we have real problems, but it's a lot better than it has been in a lot of other times. And so how do we recognize that as we continue to address the problems and move us forward and take these things on as individuals and communities?
And thank you for saying, too, that it's work, because I think we have to remember, as any practice, we have to put the time in to reprogram, to disrupt those thinking. I think so much, like we talk, like you mentioned earlier, Keith, and I love this, how that there's connections between resiliency and gratitude. How do we talk about people learn from failure. No, they don't. Failure is horrible. They learn from reflecting on failure, on thinking about how that shows up in their life, how they might want to do things differently, giving themselves forgiveness and grace. That's what they learn from. Adversity is just hard. But what we can learn from with the work is, wow, I survived that. I had more skills than I knew I had. The gratitude of having that experience lets me go forward saying, now I have an empathy for other people in the same boat that I didn't have before, which is going to make me a better friend or a better supervisor, all those things come with the work, not from the experience, but from putting that reprogramming and that practice onto that experience. I love that you said that, Keith, because I think we think it comes easy. It's worth the time. It's worth the intention.
I also think that we're afraid that if we notice, wow, the world is a better place than it ever has been, that we're going to become complacent and not work to change. At least I hear that from my folks committed to social justice work. The fear is we'll get lazy or we'll not see the issues that still need to change. And actually, by showing gratitude, I think gives us the space, the energy, the brain power to tackle those problems, right? And I think I trust our intelligence and our empathy and our compassion that comes out from being joyful, compassionate people, that we're not going to lose energy. In fact, we're going to gain energy and momentum and not lose it. But I think there is some misunderstanding about the role of gratitude and noticing and admitting that there are wonderful things in the world at this time that also is true, very difficult, that we can still move forward towards social justice. And I think that's what I'm trying to help my social justice friends.
Yeah, and I 100% agree, Lisa. I think we know that on an individual level. If I mess up and say a microaggression and someone provides that feedback for me, and I think, oh, I'm a horrible human being, I'm just terrible, that leads to shame and gets in the way of our learning. But if I can have a little bit of gratitude and say, wow, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
That's new information. I wasn't aware. That's new learning for me. Now I can actually do better, and I can improve, and I can move forward. And so how do we create that? And then how do we do that as communities? You know, when a campus, an entire campus community lets a student or a particular community of students down, recognizing what's going well in the community can help us address that. And rather than just feel like we're horrible, we're terrible, this is never going to work, but how do we do better? How do we learn? How do we do that community self-reflection? I think that's really, really important. And it's also, burnout and pride in being burnt out does not lead to the change we want to see in the world. And the seeing progress, noticing where it has happened, noticing the history of progress, noticing the history of change, helps us be effective at moving it forward. So I really appreciate bringing that in. I feel like Nadia wants to get in on this.
Oh yeah, totally. I think last summer with a couple of colleagues, we did a presentation for racialized folks across student affairs, and talking about one of the things to avoid burnout, to practice self-love, was practicing gratitude and being aware of like what we're grateful for, not seeing maybe what we bring to the table as a deficit. So thinking about our certain populations, students, Indigenous, Black, racialized, just celebrating. Yes, you had a struggle. Yes, there's ways to go, but like it's not a matter of like too bad, so sad, but like, I'm so strong. I'm here. I'm in the system. I'm making a difference. I show up. I'm, you know, like, because sometimes it could be so draining to be able to do this work that at any moment we're able to kind of pause and transform ourselves with the way we think, can make a difference and kind of avoids the burnout over time. And sometimes you might need help from colleagues and peers and people within our own communities to help us get there, but it's so important to help us last within the systems that we work in.
And noticing those systems, right? That, you know, when I say to myself, I feel so grateful that I have healthcare, it's a reminder that I am in a system right now where that is offered to me, but not everyone. And so many times my gratitude is a catalyst that it's not always shared. And I don't want to just be like, we don't want to just, it's like privilege. Just naming it isn't enough. Like #blessed. Okay, thank you, but that's not enough. What do you do when some of the things you're grateful for come from systems that you're in that benefit some but not others? And how do you use that feeling of gratitude to then go, I want others to have this as well. So what do I want to do to make that more equitable?
Well, and illuminating the privileges, whether they're earned or unearned, illuminating them and naming them is a way of making them visible. And that is a critical part, just making them visible, right? For my children to recognize that they are blessed to have meals is a recognition that not everyone does. Or they can just take that for granted and assume everyone does, right? And so how do we do this? I also want to, I love this connection to social justice. I want to return us to this notion of authenticity, because I think we hit on that briefly, but I wonder if we could expand on how important this authenticity and not faking gratitude or being Pollyanna or pretending, which is, according to neuroscience, really destructive to the things that we're trying to have. But what have you done or what have you witnessed other people doing that has really shifted to really authentic gratitude and gratefulness?
That's a good question. I think for me, Kate, I'm starting to think about the timing of gratitude as well, and making sure it happens. Sometimes we need it to happen in a moment for our own brains to be like, okay, they just thanked me for this. Oh, this produced this. This is amazing. Because sometimes our negative thoughts are always on repeat. So when someone kind of breaks it up with like, thank you so much for like having my back in that moment, you're like, Oh, okay. So if I think for it to be authentic is the timeliness of it as well. That could help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think about specificity. So that I'm not just saying, oh, thank you so much. You all work so in a generic way where I can be specific. So it means that I need to take a moment. So if I'm saying expressing gratitude, there are times it's appropriate publicly. There's a times it's in one-on-one, and that depends on context. But I have now, before every one-on-one, think about what can I express gratitude for this person today or this week in this meeting that is different than last week's, or maybe it's more of the same, but that it's intentionally designed, that I'm not trying to do it on the fly. And that's a practice. That's a new sort of leadership practice. And even one of my leadership practices was that I sent out a monthly video with some context about, here's a Brene Brown video on joy and gratitude. Here's the soul camp, that once a month, every Thursday, I send it to my staff, because I believed if we want our students to cultivate this, it starts with us. And so, but even in doing that, it wasn't just showing in the video. Then I expressed a demonstration of what I was grateful in my own life. And then I had to think of, I also then said, here's a specific thing I'm grateful for my staff. So it was, here's some information, here's a reflection for you, here's a modeling of it for me, and then here's what I'm specifically this week appreciative of showing gratitude for you. And so I did that over the course of a semester. It took a lot of time and energy, but I think it paid dividends to both model that and also to instill, again, it's practice, right? I'm trying to practice for myself, but also model what this practice could look like. So hopefully in their spheres of influence, they're doing that with their teams and their students as well.
I think it's also important I sometimes remind people how grateful I am for how they are making me feel right now, as opposed to anything that they did or the work. I'm trying to separate my process of being with them. I can be grateful for that, just not the output of what they did, the work. And so, and it takes a while to get used to. I remember in my office here, people were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're talking about that. But to say things like, I am feeling so heard by you, and it makes me feel that I'm valuable and worth hearing when you do that. And I'm just so grateful that you're willing to do that. Or your sense of grace for me when I miss that deadline and understanding, it just makes me, I'm just feeling like I'm allowed to be human here. And boy, talk about cut right to the vulnerability and things that matter. But I think that can be as powerful as a conversation as you stayed late or you got that report done on time. Like, we don't want people to be their work.
Right.
And it's been my experience, and we get the process right, the outcomes take care of themselves. Like, who do I want to work with and for, and how do I tell them that feel so lucky to do that work with you? Then the work kind of takes care of itself.
Right. David, you're reminding me of a situation where I was in a room and I had an idea, and everyone in the room disagreed with my idea. And everyone went through and literally and I really thought it was a good idea, right? This is what I want, whatever. And finally I went, okay. And I just stopped and I said, I want to let you know how much I appreciate that you all felt comfortable enough disagreeing with me. And you hear how passionate I am about this idea, but that we have the kind of relationship that you can tell me, and that you all stood up, and I appreciate that, and I want I hear you, and we won't do this idea, and so I go to gratitude. I let them know that I heard them, but I was appreciative of what was really an uncomfortable moment. At first, I was indignant, and then I stopped and went, my team feels comfortable enough to really disagree with me, and not just yes, and then talk behind my back.
Right. Which then gives you the freedom as a leader to share more ideas with them.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Well, because if it's a good one, they'll tell me, and if it's not a good one, they'll tell me. And I love that we started with gratitude, which can seem so superficial, and what we're talking about is authenticity and social justice. And David, what you're talking about is this deep level of gratitude for, we're not just thanking people for their production and their contributions, but for who they are and how they make us feel. And so we've started with gratitude and shifted all the way to undermining neoliberal practices in higher education. So we're spot on. We're doing it. We're doing it. We're doing great.
I'm glad we took care of that.
Yeah, so we got that handled. I just want to close with maybe a few suggestions for how to do gratitude. If people are listening to this and convinced I want to do this, so I'll just throw out some of my favorites, which is starting meetings or conversations or family dinners with what are you grateful for, what are you celebrating, what went well today, what's new and good, integrating it into prayer and meditation practice, a practice of gratitude. What are 3 things that went well, journaling before bed or things like that. Buying a stack of 50 thank you notes and just promising I'm going to write one every day. What are some other practices that you really would recommend to folks?
Well, I would say that it has to start with us, that I think before we can shower it on others, I think the starting place would be, how are you engaged in gratitude in your own life? And I started with, I recently re-added the Day One journal on my phone, the free app, and one of the templates is 5 minutes of gratitude AM, 5 minutes of gratitude PM, and I get a notification every morning on my phone. I set the time, and so it's right when I get to work. And so I'm adding that, and then at 10 o'clock at night, it prompts me again. And so I've been doing that for a few weeks, and again, it has made gratitude be more present in my own life. Some like the paper form, this app helps me, and so that's a recommendation I'd have.
That's great. David or Nadia?
I like Lisa's mention of including it in the 101. So that would be a good item to add to like a status agenda. And I was thinking for some people, maybe your institution might have something through your HR program where they let you like recognize staff across campus or on your team. So utilizing those, we have something called work perks where you're able to kind of like have coupons and discounts at places. So sometimes you could attach like a coupon with a thank you card or something. So just utilizing certain recognition programs and encouraging your staff to do it amongst themselves and across the campus to thank their colleagues.
And I just remind myself and others, don't take things for granted. How lovely it is to be in higher education. Not everyone gets that. How lovely it is to work on a team that you trust and care about. Acknowledge that, repeat that. How lovely it is to have skills and strengths and talents, know yours are, and feel grateful that you can show up in the world with those things. It just never gets old. Make it the water that you work in.
Well, thank you so much to all of our panelists. I'm grateful to all of you for your time today and for the great work of our producers behind the scenes, and Robbie Williford for tweeting and managing the back channel. Thanks to all the folks who have participated in that. Please join us for our next Student Affairs Live episode, which will be next Wednesday with host Heather Shea on the Ombuds office. I'll be back with you on December 13th when we'll be discussing the Student Affairs State of Affairs with Kyle Ashley and some additional colleagues. And then also on January 22nd, when I'll have a panel discussing engaging white college men for social justice with Rachel Wagner, Nolan Cabrera, and Jorg Vanden, who will be joining me for that. So a lot of good stuff coming up here on Student Affairs Live. You can receive reminders about this and other episodes by subscribing to the Higher Ed Live newsletter or browse our archives at higheredlive.com. Again, I'm your host, Keith Edwards. Thanks again to our fabulous guests today. Grateful, grateful, grateful. And to everyone who is watching, make it a great week. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.